What's going on, everybody? Welcome in to For the Millie NFC East showdown here tonight between the Eagles and the Commanders. And boy, am I glad, TwoGun and Prop, that you guys are here with me because I need your help tonight. I need you guys to tell me if I only like Eagles tonight because I'm an Eagles fan or because I'm actually just reading the game right. So, Prop, I'll start with you. Number one, how excited for this game are you? And number two, who do you think is going to win tonight?
I'm excited for this one. I think it's a lot of good props. So much so that I had to kind of tame myself from the props in the VIP, and it hasn't been like that, especially in prime time for me this season. So I'm excited for from a props perspective. As far as the side, I will lean Philadelphia. While I do respect the Commanders team, I think Philly has what it takes to expose the Washington defense, kind of the same way we saw the Steelers have success on the ground, and I believe that success will lead to deep shots through the air, which we'll talk about shortly. But I lean Philly getting it done, especially being at home.
I like that call. One thing that TwoGun and I just mentioned right before we went live is in AJ Brown's games this season, he missed weeks 2 through 5. When he's played, they scored 20 against Cleveland. Every other game, they've been 28 or higher offensive points. So they are a force to be reckoned with offensively, especially when they are fully healthy like they are right now. So, TwoGun, I know you like to approach the game more from a showdown perspective than a props perspective, but are you seeing a whole lot? Because personally, I'm really glad that Prop said he has a lot that he likes tonight because I only have a handful of things. So going to be relying on him and maybe yourself as well tonight a little more than usual.
Yeah, I find something interesting. First of all, we talked about who we like for the night. Did you see what our betting model has?
No, let me bring that up. I'm assuming it has a link to the Commanders.
It's 25.2, Philadelphia at 23.5.
Yeah.
It flat out thinks Washington's going to win.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Like, I would put this way. Like, in those things I do, those betting contests, I didn't take this game. Either way, I'm kind of like my gut says leans more towards Philly, kind of like Prop, like, and we were saying about AJ Brown, like, I don't know. I'm not really going to go with it. I have no real bet on the spread on this game. My real feeling on this game is perhaps is the under, and I think they're going to run the ball more. Both teams, obviously, Philadelphia is great at running the ball, but Washington wants to run the ball. They have two great running backs. They have shit wide receivers except for McLaurin. Jaden Daniels likes to run the ball. There's going to be lots of running. So to me, that screams under, lower scoring, quicker game. And I like B-Rob's, more than for his rushing or his rush plus receiving. I just think he's going to be involved. That's what Washington wants to do. They want B-Rob to be involved in this game. So that's kind of where I lean. I don't really lean so much on like who's going to win the game. I found our betting model interesting because obviously if they're right, they're going to be tooting their own horns a shit ton on Twitter tomorrow. And of course, if they're wrong, we're just going to pretend like it didn't happen. But
yeah, it's a really interesting call by the model because from a DVOA perspective, Philly is one spot behind Washington now. Both are top 10 teams, but Philly has been surging, particularly after their bye once they got fully healthy. So I was expecting to see the opposite. Very interesting to see that the model has it that way. And oftentimes we are just better off listening to the betting model. I can tell you I'm reading the game differently. And like I said, maybe I am being blinded by my Philly fandom, but we'll get into the stats that are pointing me the way that I'm looking at it. But you started with Brian Robinson Jr. there. He's at 48.5 rushing yards. I couldn't convince you to lean to the 23.5 first half rushing yards instead to maybe take away some of that risk of Washington getting behind. But you're following the model there. So no surprise that you're just going to stick with it. Philly is 21st in adjusted line yards allowed and 15th in open field yards allowed. So as good as their defense has been, they have been conceding some stuff on the ground. And part of that is they are becoming more and more of a run funnel with how well they have defended the pass of late. So I think you might be onto something there with Brian Robinson Jr. I'll kick it to you here, Prop. How do you feel about Robinson's over on rushing yards?
Yeah, I like it. I just didn't speak on it because I knew that TwoGun liked it. So I pretty much, I let him have the floor with it, but I think it's a great spot for him. I'm not mad at that first half number that you mentioned too. And I like his first quarter rushing yards. I think it's at like 10.5. He has a nice hit rate on that. And I like him to score a touchdown tonight too. So I'm on board with anything B-Rob for sure.
Nice. I know you have a lot of stuff that you like, so why don't you take us to your favorite pick of the night?
Yeah, I'll go with a sneaky one first. Of course, Saquon is pretty obvious, but to kind of talk to you about it, Kenneth Gainwell, rushing yards over 13.5 and longest rush over 7.5 yards. I think that number is too low in this spot. You've seen multiple running backs cover in the same game against Washington. Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren both had 10-plus yard runs. We've seen that a lot of times this season against the Commanders, where the 1 and 2 options are breaking loose. I'm looking at FTN's stats hub explosive run rate, and the Commanders are allowing the third most explosive runs. So rushes of 10 or more yards, they are at 44. Only one run behind the Giants, and they have not played yet. So they'll be number 2, maybe number 1, because the Colts have allowed 46. I can see Washington allowing 3 or 4 big runs tonight of 10 yards easily. So they'll probably be the worst defense in the NFL by the end of this night. 714 explosive yards allowed, 1 touchdown. And we've been pretty much attacking this every week. Me personally, since I found out about it, shout out to our guy Dane, who let me know that we even had this metric. And I'm gonna go with Gainwell. Looking at him, I had his hit rate real quick. There we go. So to his longest rush this season, he's over in 5 out of 9, and in the last 5 out of 6 games. So it's happened recently. As he's sure of that RB2 role, getting more touches, and then when you look at the Commanders' defense, they're allowing the 5th most rushing yards per game. So he's going to be on the field. I do expect Philly to have a lead, so I think we'll see more running. And even if not, even Pittsburgh, they were trailing, but they still were running the football. So you can run on the Commanders no matter what the scenario is or the score. So I'm not really worried about that. If you look at Gainwell's rushing yards this season, he's only over in 4 out of 9. So he had a 9-yard carry against Tampa Bay, which cashed that longest rush. So it's like it's safer to me, and it's a great matchup for him. So I like both Gainwell props today.
I agree with all that. Kai guy in here saying prop looks way too well rested for a newborn father. I don't know how you do it, prop, but we're glad to have you here with us once again. Yeah, I think you're spot on with this analysis. The other thing I'll say is it's 4 of 5 since the bye in both of these categories, where they're looking at the rushing yards or the longest rush, and very, very clear kind of game plan change coming out of the bye. It looks like it's much more of Kellen Moore's offense and a lot less Nick Sirianni's offense since the bye. You can see there's just a commitment to the run game. The Eagles have been dead last in pass rate over expectation since their bye, and when you're running that much more, Saquon needs those breaks. And so suddenly, Gainwell had 5 carries in the first 4 games combined, and now he's had more than 4 carries in every single game since, except the Cleveland game where he had 3. So it has been a very, very different approach from Philly. They're running the ball extremely well. Like you said, Washington allowing a lot in the explosive run department, and we can see more of the same here in the adjusted line yards numbers. Washington 29th in adjusted line yards allowed and 24th in open field yards allowed. So as you said, this is a great matchup on the ground for Philly. So I'm going to stick with the exact same kind of philosophy here, and I'm going to go longest rush for Saquon Barkley. He has just been an absolute animal when it comes to these explosive runs, and his number is only 18.5 here for the longest run. Did they take this down momentarily? They always do this at the worst time. Let me refresh. Let me see if it's back up, because we were also talking about laddering this all the way up to 49.5, which is definitely something that I'm going to do. And so the way I'll do this is, I'll find my favorite 3-pick play or my favorite 6-pick play. And instead of just running it once with the longest rush over 18.5, I'll do it once with 18.5, then once with 29.5 and 39.5, all the way up to 49.5. I do want to bring attention, there it is, to the fact he has gone over 50 yards in 3 of 9 games so far this season. 7.36x is enormous. It's basically saying he should do this 1 out of 8 times. So A 3 out of 9 suggests it's fantastic. And we get this great matchup. I just think like going into the season, we knew that this was the potential for Saquon in this offense. Teams have to pay so much attention to Hurts. They have to pay so much attention to the wide receivers out wide. You put an explosive running back behind this dominant offensive line, and you're going to get big plays throughout the game. So every single one of these numbers, I think, is really good. I'll go ahead and put in the over 18.5 just to start, but everyone watching should know we're laddering this thing all the way up to 49.5. I also wouldn't be mad if you just did 18.5 and 49.5. Just go for the big one and maybe don't worry about all the intermediate steps. But at each number, know that the math is in favor of it. So I think this is a really good one. I know, Prop, that you like this as well.
Yes, sir. I like I said, it was pretty much the capping for the running backs was easy for me because I had just capped Jaylen Warren against the Commanders. So with Saquon and Gainwell, it was just like a plug and place, pretty much the same bets. Add a little bit more. And I mean, for all the reasons we said, so I don't want to harp on it too much. But yeah, I like it up to 50. Like I told you, my guy Coop, I saw he laddered it up to 50 as well. So all signs point to go.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I want to ask you guys about A.J. Brown here, because when we bring up the DVOA adjusted fantasy points against data, you'll see Washington really only has one weakness in this data, and that is wide receiver ones. Now, the reason why running backs are at -6% is because Washington has been in control of so many of their games this year that running backs just haven't gotten the volume. But when teams are able to run the ball against them, they are breaking off these explosive runs. And we saw both Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren just have sustained success throughout the game as well. So don't just look at this and kind of assume, oh, it's not that great of a matchup for Saquon. It is because we expect the Eagles to be able to run the ball more than most teams have against them. But we also have this huge plus 38% number for opposing wide receiver ones. Washington playing the 9th most single high coverage in the league. When I see a team playing a lot of single high coverage, I know A.J. Brown is in for a big game. The only problem I have there, and I should note, A.J. Brown is dominating the league once again in yards per out run against single high. So that is absolutely something we want to look at. But Washington has been surprisingly good at preventing explosive plays in the passing game. So I'll stick with you here, Prop, first. Do you like the longest reception for A.J. Brown, just kind of counting on talent and the expectation that Washington will have to play a decent amount of single high because of how much attention they have to pay the running game, that A.J. Brown's just inevitable? Or are you more likely to go to his receiving yards or a receiving touchdown, seeing that, the way that they played single coverage against George Pickens in the red zone can lead to an A.J. Brown touchdown, just like it did for Pickens? What's your lean? What's your favorite A.J. Brown prop trying to take advantage of this matchup?
So for Brown, on my 7-game parlay, I actually took his receptions and just teased it down to 5. So that was my favorite look for him, but I can never be mad at his longest reception because he's covered in all but one game, and that one game resulted in him being hurt. So that's the only reason he didn't cover. He would have covered all his props in every game besides that. So
I'll tell you, I think one thought that I have is I might just skip his props and just take him as the captain in Showdown, because I think he's a phenomenal captain at lower ownership than probably the 2 quarterbacks and Saquon. But longest reception, taking this up to 39.5 at 1.74x is also really intriguing. He's gone over 40 yards in 4 of 6 games. So are you intrigued by that number there? And do you like it more than the 1x 27.5? Because I know that I do.
Yeah, I would take that. I would take the 40 plus, and it's going to be between him and Smitty. We'll get into my look, I guess, after this. But yeah, I actually like Smith's longest reception just because of his history against Washington. But the setup for this one, it's also probably easy just to take Hurts's longest completion the way we took Burrow, because teams that run the ball well, what does that do? It sets up the play action shots. We saw Russell Wilson go vertical with Mike Williams. George Pickens had a 30-yard completion against his secondary. So I think both receivers could do it. I mean, we just saw 2 receivers get 30-plus yard receptions last week.
Yeah, Hurts has been over 40 for his longest completion in all but 2 games, the loss to Tampa and the loss to Atlanta.
Yeah, and what about those games? Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown weren't even there.
Both of them. So yeah, I think that this is an awesome one, and I think that's an awesome call. Why don't we just add this longest completion there. That way it can be either one. We saw last week, right? Like Pickens had some explosive plays, but who was the guy who got the one-on-one coverage and won the game late? It was Mike Williams.
Yep.
The explosive plays should come, and it's those exact moments where it's one-on-one on the outside, whether it's Devontae, whether it's AJ, chances are it's going to happen. In fact, it could even be Jahan Dotson. We've seen Dotson make some actually great catches down the sideline in each of the last 2 games.
I was going to ask
kind of the only 2 things he's done in a Philly uniform, but they were pretty nice plays. So I like this one for Jalen Hurts. TwoGun, why don't you maybe either add fuel to the fire here on these 2 guys, or talk to us about another one that you really like?
I don't know. I just think something to remember is like if we think they're gonna run the ball a lot, which I kind of agree with, I just feel like the passing won't be there as much in this game. Like I kind of like the passing unders, especially with these rushing overs that we got.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny you bring out Dotson because no one wants to use him in Showdown, and it's a revenge game.
Yep.
It's I don't have him yet. I might sneak him in a lineup now that we've kind of been talking about him. Like, like is this something we should look at a little bit more? Because at first
look how low his receiving yards total is.
7.5.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
I mean, he's out there for almost half the snaps.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And like I said, he's made plays each of the last 2 weeks. So I think your call on Showdown is really good, because if he does hit in Showdown, that's a huge advantage for sure. So
I'd be interested to see his separation rate, because he's only getting 1 target the last 2 weeks, and he's caught it, and it's catch his longest reception both times.
Yeah. I think one other thing I'll note about what you said there, TwoGun, is I think I definitely agree that if we expect Philly to run the ball so much, and I know you're talking about both teams, but Philly in particular, like one of the reasons why I want the longest reception for either of these receivers or for Jalen Hurts is for that exact reason. I'm not expecting Philly to drop back a ton, so the yards make me a little bit uncomfortable expecting Philly to be running the ball a ton throughout the game. But when you are running that much, the defense has to adjust. They have to put safeties down. And when you get single high coverage against these guys, like we've seen Philly ice games a lot in the last few years by taking that deep shot one-on-one to AJ Brown. And when a lot of other teams in the league would just hand it off and punt, a few plays later. So I think this longest completion and the longest receptions for both AJ and Devontae make a lot of sense. And they actually correlate well with a lineup or with an underdog entry here that assumes that Philly will be able to run the ball effectively. So I don't think we're running into inverse correlation because we're going to the longest numbers instead of the total yardage.
Yeah, I think that's perfect for what TwoGun is saying, because there's a world where the passing yards go over, a couple of the receivers go under their receiving yards, but the longest completions and receptions cash. So I think it's great that we're not, tying ourselves up with pretty much nobody's receiving yards over.
Yeah, TwoGun, you mentioned liking some of the passing unders. Do you like the Jaden Daniels under on his 226.5 passing yards?
Yeah, I generally like the Jaden Daniels under more so, because I think people are loving the Washington pass a little too much. And I don't want to break y'all's bubble. I think maybe people, if anything on the Philadelphia side, they're probably liking Saquon a little too much, especially with AJ Brown back and stuff like that. So if I'm going to take a passing under, I'm going to generally go with Jaden Daniels. I put it this way. I like the Jaden Daniels lower pass yards with the B-Rob over much more so than I like going Philadelphia either way. Like, I don't know. Like, Philadelphia will just do it how they want to do it.
Yeah.
But I just think that this Commanders team is going to want to use the running backs as much as they possibly can and keep the ball out of Jalen Hurts' hands.
Yeah, I agree with this. I think it's also worth noting, look at Philly's metrics now against the passing game. A couple things to note. Early in the season, particularly after that Tampa game, they were a positive passing matchup, and they were a phenomenal wide receiver one matchup. Everything has just gone dark red. They have been so good defensively since the bye. They have really shored up their tackling, which was a major issue. And Cooper DeJean coming into the starting lineup for Avonte Maddox has also made a world of difference. And then they've also kind of gone away from Bryce Huff a little bit. Nolan Smith playing a little bit more than him in the pass rush has also gotten dramatically better since the bye. So I like I said, I know that I'm an Eagles fan, and maybe that's coming here, but I'm hoping that you guys see like every single data point about this game says the Eagles have just become a really, really good team since the bye, and it makes sense to kind of expect that they're going to continue that way. And I know some people will point to the fact the Eagles haven't played a great schedule yet, but neither has Washington. In fact, Washington has played an even weaker schedule. So if you're going to make that criticism of Philly, you got to make the same criticism of Washington. So I actually feel pretty strongly about the script for this game. And one other thing there is going back to this Jaden Daniels under. One reason to like this is because I do think this is a game that Philly could really just control the possession with how well that they run the ball. So, Prop, are you also on board with this 226.5 passing yards under?
Yeah, I'm not mad at that under at all, especially with B-Rob being back. Like we said, I think, Washington will want to run the football, establish that ground game. When we're looking at the receiving options for the Commanders, it's Terry McLaurin and then Zach Ertz, So, and those are the only two guys that I'm trusting. So it's kind of hard to see them, consistently getting to that 227. So I'm not mad at the under in this spot.
Yeah, one thing I'll say about the passing game for Washington, Philly plays the fifth most single high coverage, and they've played the most man coverage. McLaurin has done a lot of damage, and basically the only Commander who has done anything against single high. He's also been their best guy against man, but he's not outproducing his two high end zone looks when he gets that single high man coverage very much. It's just that all of the other guys drop off. So this is kind of just a tough matchup all around for this Washington passing game, which is why I like the under here for Daniels.
What's crazy is I do like McLaurin over though. I like his receiving yards over, but I'm just not sure who else is going to show up for Washington.
Would you prefer the 24.5 longest reception
for him? I kind of like it. I just think his yards are just too low anyway, especially if we're thinking they're going to be trailing with 60.5. I think on the books, I don't know what it is on underdog.
Because it had disappeared. Okay, it's back at 61.5. My thought is, does he get to 61.5 if he doesn't get higher than a 24.5 longest reception?
Probably not, because you'll probably have like 4 catches, have a 25 yarder in there. So yeah, I could see either way.
That's the thing. Like it's a little bit surprising, but McLaurin doesn't dominate targets the way you would expect on this team, given how much better he is than all of his teammates in the receiving game. Like, he had 54-yarder against Pittsburgh. He had 19 total yards against New York, had a long of 18, 65 for the long against Chicago, 25 against Carolina, only 53 yards against Baltimore, only 14 for the longest reception. 112 against Cleveland, 66 came on one reception. So he's only gone over the 61.5 number once this season without the longest reception being over 25 or over 24.5. So I definitely think that's noteworthy. Actually, I take that back. He hasn't done it at all, because in that Carolina game, it was 25. So every single time he's gone over 61.5, he's had a longest reception over 24.5. So I wouldn't have an issue with that. It also is less inversely correlated with the Jaden Daniels. But do we like something else better for the 6th pick? If not, we can go to that over 24.5 longest reception prop. I know you had a bunch that you like tonight, so I'll leave it to you. Do you have a 6th pick for us that you like even potentially more than McLaurin?
More than McLaurin. We already got B-Rob. Oh, yeah. Well, we don't got A.J. Brown on there, right?
We do not.
Okay, so Devontae Smith, longest reception. That's another play that I ended up going with. Like I said, his numbers are a little bit lower than A.J. Brown's. He's the leading receiver, like target share wise, but that's because A.J. has missed 3 games and Smitty missed 1. But you look at the longest reception just against Washington, over in 5 out of the last 6 head-to-head. He's averaging 32.2 on the longest reception. So 38, 37, That was last season. Then 15, 45, 30, and 28. So when he goes over, he goes, way over. And like I said, it's just this. When I take this, it's hand in hand. I try to take it with a quarterback who can go vertical and a team that has a great running game. So I mean, Philadelphia checks all the boxes for me. And I just think with Saquon with the ground and pound, set up that play action, then there's Smitty. So this was kind of like an easy cap for me.
Yeah, I like that. And on sportsbooks, you can definitely put these together in a same game parlay. I don't know if we can on Underdog. Let me click this and see. Yeah, I think we're going to get this message. You can only have one between Hurts and Devontae Smith.
Okay.
That's it's a bummer. It's a bummer because I think the read is fantastic. In fact, honestly, like I wouldn't be mad at a same game parlay that had over on the longest reception for both Devontae Smith and AJ Brown with the longest completion for Jalen Hurts. But here we can't do that. So gotta find something else. Is it Jahan Dotson? Should we just take the over?
I would just take his yards.
I hate to say this, but I'm liking Jahan Dotson just a lot more in this game. Or Jahan, or how do you pronounce his name?
I think it's Jahan.
Maybe I'm an idiot, but like he's not used at all in Showdown. He's kind of a big play guy, and everyone's constructing their lineups in Showdown to basically they'll use like the super cheap guy like the Luke McCaffrey or whatever. No one's going to use him. He's so low in these pick six, and like he's getting snaps. He's out there. I don't know how much I believe in the revenge game narrative, but for like the Jahan Dotsons of the world, that's where it'd be for. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe he gets one big play. It's like a one big play type thing you're hoping for with this guy.
Let's check the route numbers for Philly. Let's make sure that he's continuing to play a bunch. So in week 10, let's see, AJ Brown led the team with 25 routes, Devontae Smith 25. Jahan Dotson still in the field 18. One fewer route than Dallas Goedert if we look at the other wide receivers. Aeneas Smith 4, Johnny Wilson 5. So yeah, I mean he's still out there all the time.
And I'm gonna tell you, Grant, your numbers basically saying Grant Calcaterra is gonna get 10x the ownership. Obviously because it's cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
But this is before the millie.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what today is? It's Mega Millionaire Showdown. They have them like once or twice a year.
Yep.
So I'm saying my for the millie guy, Jahan Dotson.
Yeah, I like it. And I think
I don't know how to pronounce his name. I'm sure I'll butcher it every single day. At least I'm getting the last name right. At least, probably.
I wonder on Underdog. Maybe someone in the chat knows this answer. I haven't encountered this on Underdog specifically. If a guy has 0 receptions, do they count that as a wash for the longest reception, or do they count that as a loss? Because I think it differs from one sportsbook to the next, depending on how they price that. That's probably worth learning, because if no receptions is a wash, then I definitely think we want the over 7.5 longest reception. Otherwise, I think we just go over 8.5 receiving yards.
Yeah, there's no point in taking over 7.5 unless it's a wash. But
Yeah.
Why are we being little bitches? Let's just take the over 8.5. He's also 8.5 on pick 6. It's probably my favorite play there. I'm really just doing pick 6 right now for the main slate, not so much for this slate. But yeah, I guess I've kind of, I don't know, maybe it's just stupid, but I like Dotson. He's probably my sneak. I'd say Dotson, and he's my sleepy play on the Eagles. B-Rob, I guess, would be my play in general on the Commanders, but that's not like crazy.
All right. So what we have here for the official 6-pick play for the Millie, Brian Robinson Jr. over 48.5 receiving yards, Gainwell and Saquon over their longest rush number 7.5 and 18.5, Jalen Hurts over 38.5 longest completion, Jaden Daniels under 226.5 passing yards, and then Jahan Dotson over 8.5 receiving yards. With that, let's kick it over to Showdown. And I'll start with you, TwoGun. Talk us through your favorite captain selections on tonight's Showdown slate.
it's funny because I don't really have a captain I love. I don't like Barkley as a captain. I'll leave that because I feel like there's very few instances where Jalen Hurts will not have more points than Barkley, and they're both about the same. So right now, I'm a little bit all over the place with my captains. I have 2 Jalen Hurts, 1 B-Rob, and 1 Commanders defense. I generally don't like the Commanders defense is obviously the cheapy one. I generally don't like having too much cheapy because I think people are going to overthink how much fantasy scoring is in this game. But that's just where I'm at. So I'm really more of a flex guy, like what I'm looking for in the flex, and I'm definitely over-owning, obviously, Dotson now and B-Rob, and just trying to make some sort of weird combinations where I think a lot of people are basically going to be doing like studs and just garbage, like one garbage guy to make them afford it, whereas I'm trying to be a little bit more nuanced with my guys, my lives.
Yeah. So one thing that I will note is when you look at the top captain ownership here in the optimizer, you see Saquon, Jalen Hurts, Jaden Daniels all up above A.J. Brown. You see A.J. Brown is lower than all 3 in salary as well. And let me point to the ceiling column where A.J. Brown has a higher ceiling than Saquon and is basically on par with both Daniels. And Jalen Hurts kind of separates a little bit. But let's also note the DVOA matchup is spectacular for A.J. Brown. We already pointed to this, but plus 38%. Nobody else in the whole game has that good of a matchup. So I think A.J. Brown should not be the 4th most popular captain. He is definitely my favorite captain for the Showdown slate. Prop, how do you feel about the captains on the slate? I know you don't play Showdown to the level that TwoGun and I do, but I think kind of week in and week out as we talk through it, you're getting a better and better sense. So how do you feel about AJ as the captain here?
Yeah, I love it. AJ was the 99.9 rating on our wide receiver cornerback tool the last 2 weeks. So I was betting 3 bets on him each week the last 2 weeks. So I'm not mad at it at all. He's up there high this week too. I just didn't bet on him because it's a Thursday night game. But you can't. I don't think you can go wrong with AJ. And that touchdown has been eluding him. So I think it's about time for it.
In Caleb's Showdown article, TwoGun, he mentioned that if he has A.J. Brown as the captain, he doesn't really want Saquon in the lineup, period. Are you okay having Saquon when A.J. Brown is your captain? Or you kind of agree with the logic, basically saying...
I totally agree with the logic.
Yeah.
In fact, I totally agree with the logic. And in general, the way I'm approaching most of my lineups is I think I have Jalen Hurts in every single lineup. He's just the man. And unless he gets injured, he will hit value. If you like, that's just the way he is. Like his absolute worst game was a 1.5x, and he's generally like 2 to 3x his salary. His salary should be non-captain salary should be closer to 14 to 15. So I have Jalen Hurts in every single lineup, and then I'll generally have him with one of his studs, whether it's Devontae Smith, AJ Brown, or Saquon. I generally don't want to have more than one of those guys. So, and then after that, it's whatever. Like I'm fine having Dotson with one of those, studs or, whatever fits. Yeah. But that's, to me, is key is not overloading your Eagles because unless the Eagles are going to beat them like 40-3, they're going to cannibalize each other's points generally. And I just don't love the Eagles beatdown so much. I don't even think I think I have. Do I even have one anymore? I had one in the past. I do. I have one. And in my Eagles beatdown, I'm using kickers, defense, blah, blah. Like, I still just have one stud with Jalen Hurts in it. So that's generally my rule is you choose one. You really want to choose one of Barkley, Devontae Smith, or A.J. Brown to be with Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, I like that. I think one thing I'll add to it is one thing you talk about a lot, TwoGun, is when you are using a quarterback in the captain spot, you don't want the kicker because you want them scoring touchdowns. Quarterbacks are touchdown dependent. When they throw a touchdown, it's only 4 points relative to the running backs and wide receivers scoring 6 points with the touchdown. So if you're going quarterback captain, you need the touchdowns to actually happen. If you are using A.J. Brown as the captain, what do you think of kind of forcing Jake Elliott in there, which will potentially increase the chance that AJ is the optimal captain instead of Jalen Hurts. You're, of course, still using Jalen Hurts as a flex, but now you are also kind of assuming, all right, AJ Brown catches 1 touchdown, but the Eagles don't score 4 of them, and Jalen Hurts doesn't run in 2 of them. They end up settling for a few field goals as well.
Yeah, that's probably, yeah, you're right. That's probably how we do it. I feel like with these quarterbacks, since they run the ball, they're less like it's like they're just almost like less touchdown dependent, but they're still quarterbacks, so they still need touchdowns. Yeah, I like that. I don't have an AJ Brown captain lineup with Elliott. I don't think I have Elliott. But if you're right, if I was going to have an AJ Brown captain, I would definitely use Elliott with it as a way of separating.
Yeah,
and I probably would make it a little bit of just like slower scoring. I might take the picker on the other team too, on the Commanders.
Well, that's actually a great segue into my next question, because if you are using a Philly onslaught, and this honestly like also applies to a 4-2, but who are you looking for as a bring back? Because one thing, as we mentioned, like if there is someone with a good matchup on Washington, it's probably Terry McLaurin, potentially Brian Robinson Jr. A specific question for you, TwoGun. Do you think it's okay to use Jaden Daniels as the only bring back in a Philly onslaught because of his rushing upside? Or have we not seen enough of that of late where you think we have to go to a skill guy of some kind?
No, I think you can use him. He's one of the few quarterbacks where you could use him. I wouldn't like force it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like if you don't have the salary for him, like you only have the salary for like McLaurin or I don't know. I feel like B-Rob's kind of bad as like because if it's an onslaught, they're going to be throwing the ball.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of like if it's an onslaught, I like Jaden Daniels or McLaurin to be the one on the other side. And I think anything less than that is like that's just way too much salary for the Eagles.
Yeah. PropGod. Jake Elliott, $5,200. Zane Gonzalez, $4,800. Then you get to the Eagles defense, Jahan Dotson, and the Commanders. Below them, we have Kenny Gainwell, Olamide Zaccheaus, both of the Washington 3rd and 4th string running backs. Johnny Wilson, De'Ami Brown, Luke McCaffrey, Calcaterra, Aeneas Smith, Shipley. Who do you think stands out, if anyone, from this like extremely cheap bargain range?
Gainwell. It's pretty easy because even if I like him to perform on the ground anyway. Like you just said, he's getting at least 4 carries, and let's just say Saquon gets that longest rush you're talking about, right? And he goes for 40 or 30 to 50 yards downfield, and they're on the 10-yard line, and he's tired. Then in comes Gainwell. He can steal a touchdown if Hurts doesn't do it. So I think Gainwell has more of an upside. Yeah,
we haven't seen the Gainwell touchdown this season yet, but he has scored plenty over the last few years. And to your point there, like the Eagles are not afraid to just say, all right, let's get Saquon off the field, but let's just go tempo. Especially if like, let's say Gainwell's in on a 3rd and 4 from the 20 and they get a first down. Well, now the Eagles know, okay, they have their, smaller body pass defense personnel on the field. Let's just go up tempo, run the ball down their throat. They're not going to be able to stop us. We've got too many big guys up here. So that's something we've seen the Eagles do plenty in the past, and it hasn't happened yet this year, but it absolutely could. So I love the call on Gainwell, $3,200. I'd also say he works extremely well in an Eagles onslaught where you are kind of building in the idea that the Eagles run the ball effectively all game long, keep the Washington offense off the field, and Saquon's going to need those breaks from time to time. Any closing thoughts here from you, TwoGun, on the showdown or any other prop stuff that we missed?
I don't think so. Like I said, I think the biggest mistake people will try to make is fitting in too many Philly studs. Just kind of accept that there's probably only room for one of them to shine, and that's fine.
When you actually, let me ask you this first. Do you have an idea of what your lineups are going to look like in terms of how many Eagles, how many Commanders?
Well, I have 5 lineups right now, and most of them are 3-3 or 4-2 Commanders, and I have a 1-5-1 Eagles, to give you an idea. So the most of them are pretty balanced. And But the one thing that's consistent, I think I've Jalen Hurts in every single lineup, and I have generally one of his studs with him in every single lineup. I might have Jahan Dotson or Dallas Goedert or whatever, or the kicker, but I don't have any lineup with Jalen Hurts, Devontae Smith, and AJ Brown, and then garbage little guys. Pay for it. I'm just not doing that. I think it really lowers your ceiling on your lineup. So I'm not doing that. And Washington's a little bit different. And I think the biggest thing I'm doing there is I'm probably gonna have more B-Rob in the field. And I have Eckler in one lineup, which I guess is more than the field. More than enough to get up to be more in the field. So
well, that was actually going to be my very next question for you, was if you were as high on Brian Robinson Jr. in Showdown as you are on his over rushing yards prop.
Yeah, right now I have him in 3 out of my 5 lineups, which is probably more than double the average. I think people are going to be hesitant to use him because he's back from injury and they're thinking they're going to be trailing. And there's going to be all the excuses in your mind. But at the end of the day, if you're Washington, who do you want, besides Jaden Daniels, who do you want the ball to be in the hands of? Maybe McLaurin and Brian Robinson. Do they love Noah Brown and Zach Ertz? No, they're fine. They don't love Luke McCaffrey. He's cheap, but you know what I'm saying? Like, I think people are going to having a little bit of Davis Allen, or what's his name? Is it not, or something? The Rams second tight end.
Yeah, I think it is Davis Allen. What do you think of Austin Eckler? Only $200 cheaper than Brian Robinson Jr., so he's going to be extremely low owned. Do you think there's a chance for him to kind of be the Washington back that pops off? Certainly more involved in the passing game.
Yeah, I think he does well in 2 lineups. I think he does well in one where you kind of have Washington dominating the game, and in which case he does well with Brian Robinson, and they're kind of handing the ball off to both. The other is more of like a Philly onslaught where he's just getting dump off passes and he's being used in the second half. So either way, I think there's room for Eckler in a lineup or 2. You just have to be creative about it, not just have him mixed in with a bunch of other random guys.
Right. Any closing thoughts from you, PropGod?
Nah, nothing more than what I added. I think I pretty much shared everything that I liked. I went through my notes. None that I wanted to add. I did look at the Eagles' backup tight end, Calcaterra.
Yep.
And I thought about taking him for the 6 yards, but I was like, I'm falling way too deep down the rabbit hole now, so I didn't.
And are you live at 7 again tonight?
Yep.
Beautiful.
Oh, no, actually probably about 6:30, so 7:30 Eastern. So 30 minutes before kickoff.
Beautiful. We will see you guys there. Thanks once again for tuning in. We'll be back Sunday morning for the Paywalled Subscriber Show. One final note, we did release a main slate matchups show for the first time yesterday. You can find that on the FTN YouTube channel. You can find that through the FTN Fantasy Twitter account or my Twitter account at AlexBlickel1. Brand new type of show. Would also love feedback. Let me know what you guys think of the show. We want to keep doing it for you guys, kind of taking a look through all of Stats Hub, the adjusted line yards, going matchup by matchup for every single game. Appreciate you, Xavier. Appreciate all you guys in here. As always, we will catch you next time.